So source number 5. Until this point, we spoke about Rosh Hashanah being the anniversary of the creation of mankind. I mentioned last night between Mincha and Mariv that the 25th of Elul aligns with the first day of creation, because Rosh Hashanah is the 6th day of creation, which is the creation of mankind, Adam and Chava. And therefore, it is a time that we return to in terms of recreating ourselves, and it's when the lease gets renewed. That's when the contract gets renewed. Right? So we sort of settle into a certain degree of complacency during our contract. When it's contract renewal time, there we realize that it's not quite as set as we might have hoped, as we might have imagined. And therefore, Rosh Hashanah, we discussed, is that time of that renewal. Of course, Rosh Hashanah is also known as the Yom Hadin, the day of judgment. So let's understand a little bit further what it means when we say it's a day of judgment, and what criteria our sources teach us are the criteria for that judgment. So first we have the very famous Mishnah in, makes sense, the tractate of Rosh Hashanah. And we learn that there are different Rosh Hashanah. So source number 5, is that what I said? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so there are different Rosh Hashanah for the year. The Gemara says, the Mishnah actually says, Ba'arba'a prakim ha'olam nidon. There are 4 times when the world is judged. Ba'Pesach ala tevua. On Pesach, it is about the produce, the harvest. Ba'atzeret on Shavuot al perot ha'ilan, on the fruits of the tree. Berosh Hashana, on Rosh Hashanah, kol ba'ei olam, all those, they say inhabitants of the world, but I like the more literal translation. Ba'ei olam is all those who have come to the world, right? God says, welcome to my world. All those who have come to the world, ovrim lefanav, pass before him, before God, kivnei maron, like b'nei maron. And the Gemara gives different explanations of b'nei maron. The most classic explanation that's most commonly used is like the shepherd and the flock. B'nei maron are the sheep that go out of the pen in order to tithe them. There needs to be the tally, and they go out one at a time, and each one is counted, each one is focused upon. As it states, Shneimar hayotzer yachad libam hamevin el kol ma'aseyim. Right? He creates their hearts, understands all of their actions. Uvechag, and on Sukkot, nidonin al hamayim. We are judged on the water for the year. And that's why by Sukkot we do all those mitzvot that are water related. For example, okay, the lulav, etrog, aravim, and adasot are all water related. So we, sorry? Simchat Beit HaShoeva, the water libation in the Beit HaMikdash, the schach of the sukkah, right? The idea is, in general, that we utilize these gifts for a mitzvah. And that's the way that we show God that, we appreciate the gifts and we attribute these gifts to Him. Ilana.
How is the arvot and the husband love related to water?
Oh, it's all growths.
Oh, okay.
It's all growths. All plant life.
Yeah, but all of sukkahs it's not in water necessarily. So
I'm sorry?
All of sukkahs it's not in
No.
water.
But what we're saying is, the water that we want is for the growth, obviously to drink water, but also for all that grows from that water. So we utilize the water gifts, and that way we show our appreciation.
We're asking, you don't want water to come down.
That's something else though. Okay? But on the new year, we're all judged, all of mankind is judged. And we explained a moment ago from the first sources, if this is the time of the creation, then it makes sense that this is the time for the contract renewal, as we'll soon see. Rambam, source number 6, in Hilchot Teshuvah, in the laws of Teshuvah, he writes, "V'shikul ze eino lefi haminyan hazechuyot v'avonot, ela lefi godalam." This reckoning, this calculation is not simply a numerical accounting, but rather according to their godalam, their size, their magnitude, is actually a great translation. Yesh zechut shehi keneged kama avonot. There are certain merits which will outweigh many sins. Shenemar yanin sabo davar tov. V'yesh avon shu keneged kama zuchiyot shenemar v'chote echad yavel tov harbe. Right? One sin might wash away many mitzvot. One mitzvah might overcome many sins. That's what it says in Avot, right? That you have to be careful with a mitzvah kala kivachamura, a light mitzvah like a heavy mitzvah, because you never know what is the true matan schar of mitzvot. Ve'ein shokla el b'daito shel kel deot. And this weighing can only be done according to the God of knowledge. Who knows how to measure everything against everything else, all the merits against the demerits. Yes, Chai Rivka.
We always hear that every mitzvah is important. So you're saying that God will then say that this is more important than that. How do we know?
How do we know? We don't.
We don't know.
Therefore, we don't pick and choose.
So we do the mitzvah.
Right.
Period.
You know, I've related before when I was teaching at the yeshiva, I was teaching out in Israel. So one of my friends, one of my brothers, I forget who it was, came and visited, and he was meeting some of my students who were a somewhat rough and tumble group of boys, and I was referring to one guy as, "Oh, how you doing, tzaddik?" Right? Now, granted, I sometimes will say tzaddik if I don't know the person's name. That's just a good, safe way of staying out of trouble. But I forget whoever it was said to me, "Rabbi," I said Eugene, right? "Why are you calling this guy a tzaddik? You know, this guy is hardly fits the normal description of a tzaddik." And I said, "How hard is it for you to put on tefillin every morning?" He said, "Not a big deal." I said, "This guy was a basketball player in high school, and he missed minyan. So therefore, they wanted to kick him off the basketball team. And this guy's whole essence was basketball. But they made a deal with him. If he would come to minyan and be in the front and lead everybody in saying Baruch Hu Baruch Shemo and Amen, then he could stay on the basketball team." Now this guy felt like a total idiot doing that. He felt like a total idiot. And he developed such an antipathy, I don't want to say hatred, but such difficulty with his tefillin. I said, if that guy is putting on tefillin now a couple of days a week, that is such an overcoming of almost an insurmountable challenge. This guy's a tzaddik. For you, it's easy. For him, so that was a situation where I felt that I could weigh someone's mitzvah. But we never can. No one knows what people are going through, what we're dealing with. So it's not for us to weigh this mitzvah, that mitzvah, right? And it's certainly not for us to weigh someone else's mitzvah or non-mitzvah. Yes, Ilan?
I agree with what you did, and I think that the person that was judgmental and that, said, "Why are you calling this person a tzaddik?" That is...
Look, he wasn't being judgmental, right? It's just like this guy, he was asking me, like, what is this, let's get real. I understand. I understand you want to motivate this guy, but is he really a tzaddik? And I said, yeah.
I think there's and I think what you did was correct, because I think there's something to telling someone they're a role model or a tzaddik, because then they want to grow into that.
Yeah, so you endorse my message.
I endorse it.
Okay, thank you.
100%.
Thank you. Just we just slide over just a little bit to make room. You good? Okay. Okay, Rabbi Yisrael Solanter writes in his Or Yisrael, source number 7. And for those, Rabbi Yisrael Solanter was the founder of the Musar movement, let's call that, which said that in addition to the usual studies that go on in the yeshiva, there needs to be set time dedicated towards the learning of Musar, towards personal refinement. And, perhaps in the earlier generations they were able to extract that along the way from their general learning, but now it needs to be its own separate focus. And he writes as follows. Every action can be assessed according to the action and the person who performs the action. Mitzad ha'pu'ula, from the aspect of the action. Every good action is gauged, is measured by the fruits that it produces. And based on that, we'll have the blessing, the praise to the one who does it. And to the extent that there are greater results, they'll be considered even greater. As the Gemara says in Kedushin, Hazuchut yesh la keren v'yesh la perot. A good act has principal reward and also has the fruit, additional reward. Aveira yesh la keren v'ein la perot. Whereas by a transgression, we look at the actual act and not at there's no additional for it. The Gemara though brings another verse and says, if it's going to cause others to go astray, then that will also be taken into account. Mitzad hapoel, from the perspective of the person who performs the action, Yichalei kol davar tov be'echot asiyato lefi tsar kiyumo. And this addresses the story that I just told you a moment ago about my tzaddik and his tefillin. Right? The quality is based on the difficulty that goes into it. As the sages say in Avot, lefum tsara agra. According to the difficulty, right? Basically, according to the effort is the reward. That's true, but the actual translation is according to the difficulty that one endures. That is the reward, right? It's based on the difficulty, right? So all of our actions, sometimes we think, oh, it's hard for me to do this, right? Actually, if it's hard for you to do it, right, that is a real bonanza for you. That all of a sudden shoots the value of that. It goes exponential. Someone says, "Oh, it's hard. I'm so tired this morning. Right? It's hard for me to go to shul, to go to class, to do this kindness, to bake this meal, right? Whatever it is, right? And a person needs to realize that if that is the case and it's difficult, then the value of that act becomes like 100 classes, 100 acts of kindness, 100 whatever it is, right? The Gemara actually says, "Echad bitzar kamei shelo bitzar." One time with difficulty is equal to 100 times without any difficulty. So in fact, we have to, right? And again, that's not something that we can measure. L'chein kol davar ra. So to any bad act, yitchalek beichut tsar shmirato. It's also judged by how difficult it was to overcome that. The more difficult it was to avoid, so then the less severe the accountability. There's also another way that this factors in. One of my rabbis once said to me, right, or to the group, right? You're going to do it. You're going to do it. Don't enjoy it so much. Right? Don't enjoy it so much. Right? Someone was talking to me about In-N-Out Burger. Right? I was saying it was a non-kosher burger. place here in California. And he was saying, Rabbi, I don't think you ever will, but if you ever decide to have a non-kosher burger, that's the one to have. Don't enjoy it too much. If you're going to have it, right? But don't enjoy it too much. And in general, I find, I think human nature is, we look forward to something, and that's a lot more than the actual pleasure that we get afterwards. I mentioned I was in Israel. I went to a kosher Mahadran restaurant near Machane Yehuda called Crave. And there for the first time, I had my kosher bacon cheeseburger. Right? The bacon they make from lamb, and the cheese they make from, I don't know what they make from, but not from milk products. Right? It was pretty good. It wasn't that great. Now, I can't compare it to what a real bacon cheeseburger might be, so who knows, right? But all these things that we look forward to. So right, in terms of a misstep, so based on how difficult it is, that will determine the degree of accountability. And I'm adding in also that if we are going to do something wrong, right, let's not enjoy it too much.
But we always get another chance.
I'm sorry?
We always get another chance.
Hashem is a loving parent who every moment that we breathe is a gift and chances. And we all have our missteps on a let me finish this paragraph, Dov. As the Gemara says, right? He's discussing the tzitzit, right? The white strings were very easy to have. The blue strings needed a very special dye. So there's a greater accountability for the white strings than the blue strings because of the ease with which they can be gotten. Mashal Madav Quarters is compared, where Salanta writes, Lemelech Basar Vadam, a king of flesh and blood, Sham L'Shnei Avadav, Le'echad Amar Havi L'chotem Shel Tit, Ve'echad Amar Havi L'chotem Shel Zahav. Right, he told one of them, bring me a seal of plaster, the other one, bring me a seal of gold. And they both, Lo Heviu, neither of them brought it. Ezein Yoshiyot Gadol, right, so who is held to a greater degree of accountability? That one who had the very easy thing to do and didn't go ahead and do it. Once again, the judgment is made and can only be made by God, right? And we don't know, right, the values, the relative values of each aveira, of each mitzvah. But there is this sense that, as we mentioned last time, on this, right, what we started off last time, I told you about Kurt Vonnegut and his novel, right, Breakfast of Champions, I think it is, and the main character is sitting in a bar and goes into a cold sweat. Why? Because who just walked into the bar, right? The author walked into the bar, and all of a sudden he realizes that his whole existence is based on the whim, the writing or non-writing of this author. And that's the sense that we have going into Rosh Hashanah. Hein Hema Divrei HaRambam, right? He concludes and says, this is what the Rambam was saying, that we quoted above, Ki ein bi'ad ha'adam le'da hishtalshut hadvarim, right? We have no idea what one thing might lead to. Levara erech ha-mitzvot v'avonot apiyat pashtutam, where what they produce. Right? And the value of the effort that goes into things. Years ago, I related a story. A friend of mine who has a shul in Dallas. So this person walks into the shul and introduces himself. Hi, my name is whatever it was. My name is John, and I'd like to make a donation to the synagogue. Right? The rabbi said, thank you very much. And the person then writes a check for thousands of dollars. This is just a walk-in. Right? So the rabbi says, thank you very much. This is quite astounding. Can you tell me what prompted you we've never met, you never attended services here, never attended classes. What prompted you to give such a generous donation? See, he said, I was in Israel, and I went to the wall, and I saw a fellow there with like these side locks, and he was praying by the wall like I'd never seen anybody pray before. And I was so moved, I was so uplifted by this fellow, that I came back home to Dallas. I went to the kosher bakery, and I asked, tell me, if there be a Jewish guy with these side locks here in Dallas, where would he go and pray? And they told me he would go to your synagogue. So that's why I wanted to donate to your synagogue. If that's the place where he would pray, that's where I want to donate to. This person ended up staying, becoming a member there, and really joining the synagogue, and helped them renovate the whole synagogue. And when he passed away at a pretty young age. And at the funeral service there, I believe his mother was there, and she spoke about how this synagogue had changed her son's life, and they spoke about how this son had changed the synagogue. And then the rabbi made a point that all this came about from a person who went to the kotel and prayed. And he probably went home that night, and his wife said, hi, how was your day? He said, fine. And where were you? I was at work, and then I went to the kotel and I davened. Anything eventful happened? No. Nothing at all eventful happened. And after 120 years, this guy goes up to heaven, and they say, here's the person who built the synagogue in Dallas. And this Hasidic guy says, "Wus is Dallas?" What's Dallas? Right? We have no idea of the effects, of the ripple effects, of the reverberations that go out. At the same time, right, if we are, we cut someone off, we are curt to someone, rude to someone, who knows what someone observing that might walk away saying and thinking, and the effect that can have. So that's what Rabbi Salanta says, that no person, ein bi'ad adam leida hishtalshut advarim. We have no way of knowing the value, the consequences, and we have no way of knowing about the tsar, kiyum shmita Torah mitzvah, the value of difficulty. Again, they say effort, but tsar actually means difficulty, right? And how much value that has.
Rabbi?
Yes.
Isn't there a portion in Pirkei Avot where it says a mitzvah begets a mitzvah, a transaction begets a
mitzvah, goreret
mitzvah.
mitzvah.
It's a rolling.
Yeah.
And people imitate what it is you do.
Yeah, and that's for ourselves also, that we motivate ourselves and others, and we also can deflate.
What we do.
Yeah. Yes.
The behaviorists say we become what we do.
Yeah. So in source number 8, the Siftei Chaim has a very, very beautiful piece here, of Chaim Friedlander. Anamase adam she'avru kovim b'dim Rosh Hashana, ulam lo avar ikar el atid. It's true that the past deeds of a person determine his judgment. The past is not the main focus, rather the future. If you think for a moment, right? So it's Yom Hadin, Day of Judgment, and it's Rosh Hashana, the head of the year. Now, when does it make the most sense to have the Day of Judgment? On the first day of the year, or on the last day of the previous year? That's when it makes the most sense to have a Day of Judgment. But our date is the first day of the year, and the main name is Rosh Hashana, which means the head, the start of the year, as opposed to Yom Hadin. The judgment of Rosh Hashanah is not like that of an earthly court, which looks at a person's past actions in order to hold him accountable and determine his reward or punishment. Such will be the case on the great and awesome future day of judgment, upon which will be judged on all our past actions, determine our ultimate reward and punishment. That is, once we leave this world. But the judgment of Rosh Hashanah is a different sort. The focus is mainly on the future. Yes, Chai Rivka?
It seems logical that it should be the last, we should finish it. But it's much better to do it at the beginning because it's fresh. We start all over again.
Right.
The other is an ending.
I agree with that. But judgment is the past, and Rosh is the beginning.
It's better to do the beginning.
Okay, but how do we merge the two? It's not going to be A or B. It's going to be a hybrid. But let's see how we merge the two. Okay? It's not this, it's better to do this than that. Let's see how he merges the two. Judgment is merely a function of the special nature of the day, since it is the Rosh, literally the head of the year, that incorporates the entire year to come. As such, naturally, God judges us by virtue of this head. He will give us all that we will receive for the needs of the new year. That is what is meant by the expression Hayom Harat Olam. Today is the day the world was conceived. Conception is used to signify that the entire year is created in potential on Rosh Hashanah. And therefore today we stand in judgment. Let's give an example from the real world. Every factory or retailer has an annual budget. The purpose of fixing a budget is for the future. That is, we deliberate about how to finance the growth of the business in the future. But in order to do so, we look back at the productivity of the previous year. There are, of course, many factors. One can only allocate resources based upon possibilities that have been determined in the past. As such, one must know the income and expenditures of the past, and on that basis prepare for the future. We see then that the purpose of a budget is for the future, while it is based on an accounting of the past. So too is the judgment of Rosh Hashanah more like a budgetary allocation than a trial. Now let's look at this for a moment. All right? So I'm the CEO, and each department sits before me. Now, some of them have produced really well, and some of them have bombed. So simply I'd say, okay, those that produced well, right, will get a good budget for this year. Those that have bombed, right, will not. But what will be the other factor that I have to take into account? Sorry? Well, something. Okay, effort, yes. I don't think the CEO cares that much about the effort, but God does. But that gets factored into productivity already.
The incentive is, if you're at the meeting and you hear your group didn't do well, I'm sure if there were people there who said committed to themselves. Now I'm done.
Okay, so the first guy who had a bumper year, incredible year, fantastic. And the CEO says to him, so what are your plans for this year? And he says, my backhand. I got to work on my backhand. It's just doesn't have the zip that I want. I want to go from a two-handed to a one-handed backhand. Right? So not much plans for this year. That's going to hurt his allocations. The person who bombed that year, and the CEO says, tell me, what are your plans? And he says, I've identified. This is what led to this problem. This is where we went wrong. This was my lack of focus. But this year, I've got a plan. I have a way of correcting. I have a way of building. And this is what I'm planning to do. The CEO's face lights up. Self-awareness and a decision about the future. A plan for the future. That's why the main thing is, on Rosh Hashanah, it's where we are pointing, where we are facing. Right? The past is the past. Fair enough. But are we imprisoned by the past? Are we locked into the past? Or are we looking to, and as I always say, a small change? Because that's the only thing that's realistic. A small change. The sages say, open up for me an opening like the eye of a needle, and I will open it up like a banquet hall. Right? A small change, but what's pointed out is the eye of a needle. What's the needle made out of? Metal. It's strong. So whatever that small amount is, that's what we're going to commit to. Let's go further in a similar notion. This is from H.com, number 9. The universe is God's global enterprise, and its main product line is good deeds. God created an amazingly beautiful, brilliantly engineered world which is perfect in so many ways, but it is purposely left lacking in others. God takes his children into the business to complete his work. Right? That is the often half expression that we hear about tikkun olam. Right? That's the half expression. Tikkun olam is to fix the world. The full expression is l'taken olam b'malchut shakai. Right? In other words, to view this as God's world and bring beauty to it. We of the human race are God's employees. Our job description is clear. Contribute to the enterprise's bottom line to the point of profitability. The spiritual assets must exceed the debits. To ensure the firm's ongoing success, an accounting system is put into place which examines each employee's performance vis-a-vis the company's bottom line. Rosh Hashanah is the time of accounting where each Jew is called before the heavenly accountants, who weigh every spiritual transaction, good deeds, as well as infractions, to determine whether the contract will be renewed for the coming year. Have we even recognized that God is in fact the CEO? On Rosh Hashanah, we affirm that God is the creator and director of the universe, amidst coronating shofar blasts and reflective prayer. I mentioned before, Rav Moshe says the two fundamental concepts of Judaism are contained in Shabbat and Yom Tov. Shabbat and holidays. Shabbat, God creator. Holidays, God is involved. God cares. He sees what's happening down here, knows what's happening down here on national levels and on personal levels. And he is involved.
Then it's not enough to be a sloth. You can't just not do bad. You have to actively do good.
Yeah.
You can't
Correct.
just be on the receiving end.
Correct.
You have to be on the recipient.
I go to work and I say, I didn't sabotage the place. Very good. Thank you very much. Right? You know, just in the news, another Hamas agent had a work accident. Right? They define a work accident is, instead of killing other people with the bomb, I end up killing myself. Right? To me, that's not such an accident. To me, that's divine. Right? Yeah, but not sabotaging it. Right? It needs to be.
At the very least, they didn't do their risk management well.
Thank God. Thank God for that. In performing teshuvah, repentance, we figure out where we went wrong, and just as importantly, how we're going to fix it. We arrive on the day of judgment with mixed emotions. On the one hand, we're optimistic and happy about the prospect of being inscribed for another year in God's majestic world. On the other, we are subdued and introspective, recognizing we still need to advocate for the renewal of the contract, another year of life, because at least we have identified our problems and are prepared to take measures to ensure they don't happen again. But who can truly say they've done all they can do as God's employees and are therefore assured of a positive outcome on Rosh Hashanah? Therefore, we are asked to consider our fates as hanging in the balance, and we are given until Yom Kippur to more fully examine our moral issues and better implement our fixes and resolutions. We try to account for our shortcomings and transgressions, resolve them never to recur as we stand before the CEO, God Almighty himself. Late in the day, we must conclude that for all our teshuvah, we still might find ourselves a tad less than fully qualified for renewal of our life contracts. If it may seem that all is lost, we look up and notice that God is our own Father in heaven. So during the prayer service of the high holidays, we say, Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King. Dad, Father, it's me, your child. Right? Please, right? I've made mistakes. We all do. Give me a break. What father can resist that kind of sincerity on the part of a beloved child? And that speaks of the confidence that we have going into a Rosh Hashanah and a Yom Kippur. But there needs to be a sense of reverence, a sense of awe. a sense of smallness, as we stand before God and we self-evaluate. There's a beautiful something we said before about Lefum Tzara Agra, according to the difficulties. We don't ask for these difficulties. Everyone has difficulties in life, and of course everyone's difficulties seem to them to be major. But everyone has these challenges and the difficulties that come along. And that is a way that we often dig deeper into ourselves and we see what it is that we can do. We prioritize and we can redirect ourselves to a certain degree. So one of the early rabbis of Lubavitch was, as happened often to the rabbinic leaders, was imprisoned on false charges. When he was there, the warden, who was a non-Jewish but a Bible knowledgeable person, he realized that this prisoner there was an unusual caliber of a human being, was an unusual caliber of a spiritual person. So he decided he would ask this rabbi a question. And he said, we find in the Bible that after the sin of Adam and Eve, God called out to them and said, where are you? That God knows everything. Why did he call out and say, where are you? He knew where they were. Why was there a need to ask? So the Rebbe looked at this warden with a very penetrating gaze and said, do you believe that the Bible speaks to every generation and to each and every one of us? Of course, the warden replied. Well, then the Rebbe said, it was not to Adam and Eve alone that God was speaking, but to each of us. Perhaps God is right now asking you, you've lived 46 years on this earth. Ayeka, where are you? Where are you? What have you accomplished? Where are you heading? The warden, hearing the Rebbe tell him exactly how old he was, without having shared that information with him prior to that, understood the message and started to tremble. So Rosh Hashanah is the anniversary of the 6th day of creation. It's the anniversary of that day where Adam and Chava had their misstep, and God asked them, Ayeka, where are you? And at the same time, God then created the new environment for them that was optimal for them. And on Rosh Hashanah, that is the time that we need to ask ourselves, because God is asking us, Ayeka, where are you? Where are you at? Right? I've given you a beautiful year. I've given you a year. Right? It might have been beautiful, it might have been challenging. I've given you a year of life. Where are you? And where do we point ourselves? That is the overriding theme of Rosh Hashanah, direction. I think the Kutzka Rebbe says, one person's here on the ladder, and one person's here on the ladder. Who is higher? So you'd say this person is higher. He says it all depends. If he's going down and he's going up, right? Which direction are we going in? That's the most important question to ask ourselves. Not yet, where are we? Pull it over here, my friends. Let me wish you all a Shana Tova,
Thank you, Rabbi.
a wonderful, wonderful year. And I think next week we can get together again on Thursday. No reason not to. Please God. And maybe we'll do a little something on Yom Kippur. Because that's heading around. Thank you. All those who want to join together and bench, please do.
Thank you.
So please call Sari. Please call Sari.
Oh, I'm thankful.
Okay?